I remember that day vividly, the sun blazing over Manhattan, the skyline casting sharp shadows against the polished surfaces of luxury cars at this upscale dealership. I'm Marcus Thompson, and I'm the CEO of Thompson Capital Management. Now, I'm all for stories of triumph, but what happened that day was beyond triumph. It was a gut check, a turning point. And you know what? It unfolded entirely in a single hour. I stepped into the dealership greeted by a lavish interior that made the place feel like a cathedral to wealth. Rows of high-end cars, those sleek lines and immaculate finishes just beckoning to be driven. But all that luxury was almost overshadowed when I approached the sales desk. That's where I met Brad, a salesman whose condescending smirk could cut through steel. "Can I help you?" he asked, leaning back in his chair, taking me in like I was some unwanted bug. He tilted his head slightly, his arrogance palpable, as he made it clear that I didn't belong in this world. I'll admit it stung. However, I also knew this dance too well. People often judge what they see, especially when it comes to race. So instead of letting his words get under my skin, I smiled, maintained my composure, and said, "I'd like to see your McLaren." Brad let out a barking laugh, disbelief oozing from his every word. "Seriously? Do you even know what you're asking for?" I'd love to say his reaction shocked me, but after years of navigating those biased waters, it really didn't. Instead of walking away, I felt this surge of determination. I stood my ground, and that decision would create ripples I could hardly foresee. With a deep breath and admittedly some swift internal pep talk, I pulled out my phone, dialing the number of someone who could help. "Karen, it's Marcus. I need you to come down to 58th Street. I didn't need to say much else. The rest was implied. Minutes felt like hours as I waited, Brad blissfully unaware of the storm gathering around his words. Karen, a district manager with a reputation for being a no-nonsense powerhouse, walked in, scanning the room with piercing eyes. "What's the issue?" she asked, taking in the scene immediately. "Just a little misunderstanding," I said, trying to keep my calm. "But it seems your sales team here thinks they can judge a book by its cover." And just like that, the atmosphere shifted. Karen confronted Brad, addressing the blatant discrimination, revealing to him, not that he seemed to grasp it, that customers shouldn't be judged based on appearance. It was a classic moment, one fitting for a film where we all could practically feel the tension change in the air. As things unfolded, a customer in the corner pulled out their phone and started broadcasting live, allowing the incident to pour onto social media. Words like racial profiling lit up the feed, turning a private humiliation into a public rallying cry. Security was called and I could feel the heat rising. Yet I remained calm. I knew this was about to escalate, but only because I had plans of my own. Finally, with all eyes on me and a few cameras rolling, I stood up. I knew how to turn this tide. I'm actually Marcus Thompson, the CEO of Thompson Capital Management, and the largest shareholder of this dealership, I stated little by little, letting the words sink in. The shock on the staff's faces was priceless, like they'd just seen a ghost. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted from condescension to confusion and then doubt. "Do you understand what this means?" I pressed, leaning closer to Brad, who was sputtering for words now. "It means I'm invested. It means I care how my customers are treated. This isn't about the car anymore, it's about respect." In that moment, I laid out my plan. I could propose a lawsuit, but I'd rather work on reform. I said, gauging their reactions. "You need to do better. You need to introduce bias monitoring and training. Hire diversely, not just in terms of color, but in experiences and perspectives. And as for you, Brad," I pointed directly at him, "I'd recommend you find another job." Watching him squirm was satisfying, but it was never about revenge. It was about making a point, about the fundamental disrespect that so many face simply because of who they are, who they look like, or how much money they have. After that incident, changes started rolling in. They began implementing the plans I proposed, hiring a diversity consultant and focusing on customer treatment. Business boomed. Revenue increased. But more importantly, customers felt like they belonged, something I had fought to ensure. Yet as I walked away from that dealership for the last time, I realized I wouldn't return. My mission wasn't just about one dealership. It was about systemic change. It wasn't just about me. It was about everyone who walks into a space feeling less than. It quietly reminded me that while I could enact change from within, sometimes the most powerful move is to step away, to let the winds of change do their work without me. So here we are. I invite you to think about your own experiences. Have you ever found yourself underestimated, judged, or unfairly treated? How did you rise above it? Is it right to stand up, or is it better for peace to just walk away? I want to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below. Let's engage in a conversation about respect, equality, and the importance of creating spaces where everyone belongs.